Superhero films have many things in common: action, drama, and comedic relief. But even though hero films may bring us great joy, it is no doubt that these films also come with the sad realization that not all heroes live forever. Here are our top picks for the most heartbreaking scenes in superhero movies. Cap asks for a rain check. Captain America: The First Avenger. Things look quite tragic for Steve Rogers in 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger, in which our dear Captain America lost his best friend in combat and missed the chance to go out on a date with Peggy Carter. Near the end of the film, Captain America gave Miss Carter a goodbye kiss as he boarded the Red Skull's aircraft, who, during their fight, was absorbed by the Tesseract and disappeared. After what seemingly looked like a victory for Cap, he found himself having to deal with the plane that was still headed for its destination of New York City. It was then that, after radioing Peggy, he made the decision to plunge the aircraft into the Arctic, sacrificing himself to save the world and leaving Peggy overwhelmed with emotion when he no longer responded. When he was rescued decades later, he ended up realizing that he was now in the future and missed out on his date with Agent Carter.
You're gonna need a rain check on that dance.
Big Daddy Dies. Kick-Ass. A young Dave Liszewski, wanting to become a real-life superhero, picks up the mantle as the baton-wielding Kick-Ass. As he begins to learn that crime fighting isn't as easy as he thinks, he meets Big Daddy, a former police officer framed by a mafia boss who now works as an undercover vigilante with his daughter, Hit Girl.
See, we like you, but we don't trust you.
Well, on a mission, Big Daddy and Kick-Ass get captured by mobsters who not only beat them on a live video stream, but also try to set them on fire. But not before Hit Girl arrives to fight off the mobsters. Unfortunately, she was not fast enough to stop them from starting the fire beneath Big Daddy's feet. Instead of trying to save himself, he worries more for the safety of his daughter, Hit Girl, and offers her as much advice as possible to see that she makes it out of the situation alive. As he burns alive in a heartbreaking scene, we see a touching moment between father and daughter, and Nicolas Cage's screams perfectly showcase both his physical and emotional pain. Professor X dies. X-Men: The Last Stand. In 2003's X-Men: The Last Stand, the sequel to X2: X-Men United, Professor Charles Xavier, aka Professor X, and Magneto go to Jean Grey's house in an attempt to contain her powers from the Phoenix Force, which was awakened after the events of the previous film. Jean, being one of the most powerful characters in the Marvel Universe, suddenly loses control and kills Professor X by exploding his body. It was unfortunate for comic book fans to see one of their beloved leaders suddenly die like this. However, it seemed that his consciousness was passed on to the body of his comatose twin in a post-credits scene for the film. And then, in 2014's X-Men: Days of Future Past, you can see Professor X alive and well, which makes sense when you realize that no one really stays dead in comic or comic book movies.
It's good to see you, Charles.
Gwen Stacy dies. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Some Spider-Man fans who follow the comics knew this was coming. The moment when Gwen Stacy, Spider-Man's first love, was to be killed by none other than the Green Goblin. As Spider-Man is fighting off the Green Goblin, Gwen, who is holding on to a spider web, finds herself falling to her death after the web snaps due to the wreckage from the intense battle. Spider-Man, in what was a truly spectacular scene to desperately save Gwen, shoots a web that successfully catches her before she hits the ground, but was not enough to save her as she dies of whiplash from the sudden stop. Comic book writer Jerry Conway was one of the few responsible for scripting Gwen's death in the comics. He had this to say about it: Mary Jane hadn't lost the edge that made her an interesting character. Gwen didn't have an edge, she was just a nice person. So it seems that Mary Jane's character seemed more interesting, so they had to get rid of Gwen to bring Mary Jane Watson to the forefront. And although the scene may have differed a bit from the comics, watching her death in the movie sure was very impacting for viewers, as we saw a very emotional Peter Parker temporarily hang up his Spidey suit as he tried to cope with his loss. Baymax's Sacrifice. Big Hero 6. Hiro Hamada, a 14-year-old boy who lives in San Francisco, a futuristic mix of San Francisco and Tokyo, is a young robotic genius who spends much of his time in illegal robot fights. His older brother Tadashi, a robotic genius himself, invites Hiro to the research lab at his school where he meets all of Tadashi's friends and the adorable Baymax we all grew to love.
Hello, I am Baymax, your personal healthcare companion.
As the two begin to develop an unbreakable bond through the events of the movie, we follow them on their quest to defeat the man in the kabuki mask, later revealed to be Professor Callahan, who is responsible for the death of Tadashi. After an intense battle, they attempt to save Callahan's daughter Abigail, but they soon realize that the only way to do this is by self-sacrifice from Baymax. And for that to happen, Hiro has to say that he's satisfied with Baymax's care, seeing that Baymax is a healthcare assistant that would do anything for Hiro as long as it results in his happiness.
Are you satisfied with your care?
Without a doubt, this was one of the most heartbreaking scenes in all superhero movies, rivaling that of the Iron Giant, and we at Cinemash would be happy to argue. But thankfully enough, Hiro finds Baymax's healthcare chip clenched in his fist and is able to rebuild his body with all his memories intact. Tony Stark, Avengers Endgame. It was the iconic and extraordinary performance of Robert Downey Jr. that kicked off the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe back in 2008. We grew a great attachment towards him as we followed his 10-year journey as Iron Man.
Let's face it, this is not the worst thing you've caught me doing.
So, there would be no other fitting way to let him go out but in marvelous fashion. Tony, reluctant to change the past with fear that he would lose what is now most important to him, his daughter Morgan, changes his mind to join the Avengers in one last-ditch effort to undo the snap that took away half of the universe's population. The Infinity Stones that hold the universe's greatest power is too much for our hero to withstand. Tony, knowing that it will surely kill him, makes one of the hardest and greatest decisions in superhero history, snapping his fingers and erasing Thanos and his army from all of existence, and thus ending his life in the process while saving the lives of many. But he does not depart from this life until his beloved wife Pepper tells him that he can finally rest. The film ends with all the people he touched over the years mourning Iron Man after viewing a moving holographic message from the MCU's Godfather himself. Love you 3002, pal. Black Widow, Avengers Endgame. Before Endgame released in theaters, we all knew that one of our favorite heroes would more than likely meet their end, many of us having our money on Captain America or Iron Man to be the ones to leave the MCU indefinitely, seeing as they've both been willing to make self-sacrifices before. And with Black Widow getting her own solo film in 2020, she wasn't our top bet to be written off. The Soul Stone, however, had different plans for her, requiring the ultimate price to obtain it, leading to one of the most emotional deaths in the MCU's history. Natasha, the Avenger that carried a lot of weight on her shoulders after the snap, and Clint, the broken man after the loss of his family, battle each other for the right to die. We, as Marvel fans, not desiring either one to win this battle and hoping there would be a resolve to where both could walk away, sadly, didn't get that ending. When Black Widow kicked herself off the cliff and Hawkeye screamed in agony, we too felt his pain and loss.
It's okay.
Did we miss any heartbreaking moments? Let us know in the comment section below, and be sure to like and subscribe for more of your favorite movie content here on Cinemash.